Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an analyst, or it could be whiskey with an analyst reading a spreadsheet, linking crime events, identifying a series, and getting the latest scoop on association news and training. So please don't beat that analyst and join us as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
Thank you for joining me. I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder, and today our guest has 10 years of law enforcement analysis experience, both with the Chattanooga Police Department and the Hamilton County government in Tennessee. She's an award-winning analyst and holds an MBA from the University of Phoenix. She's here to talk about, among other things, physical health and social harm data. Please welcome Jennifer Baggett. Jennifer, how are we doing?
Man, if I was any better, it'd be illegal. Hello, Jason.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I appreciate it. It was interesting in the prep call that your name, for whatever reason, escaped my memory. But when I saw your face, I'm like, I know Jen.
Yes, you're all famous, so I was all nervous, but I was glad that you recognized me.
Oh man, no. So it's been a while, but it was great to catch up yesterday, and I'm looking forward to getting your story here today.
Excellent.
So, how did you discover the law enforcement analysis profession?
Oh boy. Well, in short, I discovered the law enforcement analyst profession by accident. I probably shouldn't be an analyst to this day. I went to college. I went to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. My first year, I was actually a theater major. About a year into college, I realized very quickly that it probably wasn't for me to major in, and I probably couldn't get a job in theater unless I wanted to teach. So I decided to go to my counselor and tell her I didn't want to be a theater major, but what else could I do that kind of fits my open background. I've done musical theater my whole life. So she was like, well, the closest thing we have here at UTC, you could major in communications, which is like media, advertising. You could be on the news, you could be on radio. And I thought that sounded great. So I switched my major to communications. And a couple of years into my degree, we had to do an 8-hour internship, a very short internship. And they gave us a list. And they were like, here's all the places that participate in our internship program. You can choose one. I saw on there our very popular 100,000 watt radio station in Chattanooga called KZ106. It's a classic rock radio station. I basically grew up listening to it, and I said, I'll do that. That sounds cool. So I went and I interned for a couple of days there, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I said, this is what I want to do. So I went back to school and I told my counselor that I wanted to do a concentration in radio with my communications degree. So I did. I concentrated in radio so then I was able to get a part-time job at the radio station. I literally did everything but sales. I did filing. I was the secretary at one point. I was the board operator for many different shows and sporting events. I was an on-air DJ for a couple of years during the night shift. I also did my actual 150-hour internship needed to graduate. I did it in promotions at the same radio station. So I worked there for about 5 years during college.
So the night shift, what does that run? And did you have a DJ name?
I certainly did have an on-air name. It was Jennifer Rivers. Mm-hmm. I was a river rat back then. I was really into fishing. We're right here on the Tennessee River. So I had friends and a whole crew of us that would go down to the river and we'd fish and hang out and have bonfires. And so my on-air name was Jennifer Rivers. And I was that for many years in radio on KZ106. The night shift was midnight to 6 in the morning. So I did this while I was going to school, doing my internship. I was a very, very busy college student, but not involved in anything fun. Like it was all work. I was a very busy college student. But
it sounds like you got paid to have fun.
I did, but that is one reason why I left radio was because I could never get a full-time job because In Chattanooga, I don't know about other cities, but in Chattanooga, all of the big radio stations at the time, this was early 2000s, at the time, all of the full-time DJs, we called them like the old heads. They have been there since like the 70s. And they had the good gig. They had day shift, they had full-time hours, benefits, and they weren't going anywhere anytime soon. They were like there to stay. So unless one of them quit, retired, passed away, heaven forbid, there was no way I was going to get my foot in the door to like get a real first job out of college. And I realized that basically about my last year at University of Tennessee at Chattanooga at UTC in 2005 when I graduated. And I made the very difficult decision to leave radio and leave my job because I wasn't going to get a full-time job unless I moved somewhere else. And I didn't want to move. I loved my town that I grew up in. And so I thought I'm going to have to find a real job. I found a job as an administrative assistant for the city of Chattanooga government. So this is important because I was a city employee long before I was a police employee. And my police department you're still a city employee, but I was a city of Chattanooga employee for about 9 years. So I was an admin assistant for these two performance venues. And any of the listeners right now, if you've been to Chattanooga and you've been to like a concert, you've likely gone to the concert at one of three places: the UTC Arena, or Memorial Auditorium and Tivoli Theater. I worked for the Memorial Auditorium and Tivoli Theater. This was during the Mayor Andy Burke administration. And about my 9th year, well, I should back up and say during my 9 years working at the Memorial Auditorium in Tivoli, I also went back to school and got my master's degree because while I missed and loved radio so much, I knew in the moment that I wasn't going to find a radio job locally because, like I said, all those old heads were still there. I didn't want part-time work. I wanted full-time work. So I went back and got my master's degree in business. But during me getting my master's, I was still a secretary and an admin assistant during this whole time. So then Mayor Andy Burke tells us that we are laid off, the employees at the auditorium in Tivoli, they're laid off because the way he described it was that the city of Chattanooga owned those buildings, and us being in the entertainment industry, it was kind of a risk to taxpayer dollars and to taxpayers because we couldn't promote. For some reason, we were not allowed to promote shows because it was a risk to taxpayer dollars. So he wanted a real entertainment company to come in and run these buildings. Now, these venues, the Tivoli and the auditorium, they are on the National Historic Registry. They are these beautiful, old, historic buildings that are awesome. They've been around since like the 30s. They're awesome, but they also required a lot of capital money and a lot of work because they constantly needed renovations or things fixed. So I think he wanted to get the city of Chattanooga out from under it and have a real entertainment company come in. So essentially, I was laid off. He told us, you can stick around and see if the new company wants to keep you. And if they do, you will not be a city of Chattanooga employee anymore. Or we can help you try to find another job within the city. Well, I had just bought my house like 4 years prior. And I was like, I have a mortgage. I can't take the risk to see if this new company will want to keep me. So I started looking for jobs immediately. And I found another administrative assistant job at the Chattanooga Police Department. Now, I went to high school with a guy that I knew was a cop at the Chattanooga Police Department. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but I reached out to him and was like, hey, I see this job posting. Do you happen to know anything about it? And he said, actually, our admin just retired, and this is an admin for the unit I'm in. I'm in property crimes. Now, back then, I had no clue what property crimes meant, did not know what he meant, but I was like, okay, I'll apply. So I applied and I ultimately got the job. So it was really great because I was able to laterally move. I was able to keep my city benefits and pay and my accrued PTO. And by now, I was kind of done being an admin. I had my master's degree. I still did not know what I wanted to be when I grew up because radio kind of to me was out of the question. So I was like, okay, I'm going to use this next year as an admin at this police department to find a real job finally and use my master's degree.
Mhm.
So I ended up going to property crimes. I ended up finding out that property crimes at the time back then, so now we're at 2015, that property crimes was burglary, auto theft, fraud, and pawn.
Mhm.
I am actually glad that I made the decision to leave, because I found out later that at about 6 months after I left, they ended up letting all those employees go that decided to stay.
Mhm.
And I realized I made the right decision. I ended up making a lot of new friends during this time in property crimes, and I ended up falling in love with just the police culture and learning what crime was all about. Most of my job responsibilities as an admin in property crimes were giving messages to investigators from citizens calling, asking about the status of their cases, checking tow yards for stolen vehicles, helping investigators organize their case files and making sure their check sheets were correct, stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I was in property crimes for almost a year when one of my acquaintances who worked in the records department in the downstairs floor, she told me that she was leaving records and was going to be a crime analyst in the crime analysis unit. I had no clue what that was. I literally didn't even know we had a crime analysis unit. I didn't know what crime analysis was. I don't think I could even pronounce analysis. I did not know what it was. A couple of months go by, and she and another analyst come into my office and tell me that they're about to hire a new analyst and that I should apply. And I was like, well, I don't have a background in crime analysis or crime. And they said, we don't care. We just want someone that has a master's degree. And I was
Oh.
like, oh, okay. Well, I have a master's degree in business. So it turns out that there was another girl in payroll that ended up wanting to apply as well. So the two analysts from that unit told us, okay, you need to go to the IACA website and start learning what crime analysis is and start learning about Microsoft Excel and how to do pivot tables. And so me and the girl from payroll had no clue what any of this was. So she and I got together a couple of times and studied and tried to like understand what this was, tried to pivot table. We were watching, I think, YouTube tutorials. So we ended up interviewing, and ultimately I got the job and she did not. Right. So this was 2015. So now this is 2016, early
Mhm.
2016. So in the 2 weeks between wrapping up my time in property crimes and starting in the crime analysis unit, I began to learn really more about crime analysis because I was now down there in their office a lot,
Mhm.
shadowing and like trying to understand what crime analysis was. I had no clue what I was getting myself into. And I remember thinking back then going, what have I done? Like, do I need to go back to property crimes and be a secretary? Because what if I'm not good at this? Like, this
Yeah.
seems like smart people things. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you know anything about radio, but you don't have to be smart to work in radio. You just like talk
Well,
and listen to the radio.
some
Uh,
people will say you don't have to be smart to run a podcast. So, I mean,
you got to push buttons, but that's about it. Like I was I can't describe the amount of like nerves I had during this time. I genuinely thought I made the wrong choice.
mhm.
So during this 2 week time, I also found out that two of the analysts, they had a unit of four. Two of the analysts had quit. One of them ended up going and working for the city of Chattanooga, like the mayor's office, doing data down there. And one of them left to go to Knoxville. So we had my friend from Records who got that job, and we had another analyst in there. So now they hired me. So now there's three. Well, I also found out that during the time when they interviewed me and they interviewed other analysts, they also hired another one, this dude from Las Vegas, but he wasn't going to start for 2 more weeks.
Mhm.
But the dude from Vegas changed everything, and I will get into that if you'd like to later. But
Mhm.
so now this is May 2016. I'm officially a crime analyst. I get into the unit, and on my first day, everyone is so nice. I started realizing really quickly that just from my experience, I don't want anyone thinking that's listening or that may have been employed here or whatever that nobody knew about the crime analysis unit. From my experience, nobody seemed to know that we even had a crime analysis unit. We weren't being utilized to like our fullest capacity. We certainly weren't sending out products left and right. Back then, but it was all brand new, and I'm not even sure how long those analysts that were there before I got there were even there. It wasn't long. So I'm still considering us very new. I also learned during this time that our chief, Fred Fletcher, he came from Austin, Texas, and he wanted a data-driven and intelligence-led police department. I also had no clue what that meant. I had no clue what any of this stuff was. And I honestly, back then, I don't think any like regular patrol personnel knew what data-driven, intelligence-led meant. Nobody kind of knew what this meant. But Fred Fletcher was the one responsible for creating the crime analysis unit. And I just remember the crime analysis unit wasn't used to its full potential. I was still very early on learning about even what crime types there were. It was all new. And the girl from records that also became the analyst, we were all new together. And we were basically figuring it out as we went. Now, her name was Catherine. She had a background.
What's Catherine's last name?
Hill, H-A-I-L or H-I-L-L. Catherine had a big background in programming from like the 80s and 90s. So she was super smart in programming. And I just remember kind of shadowing her and leeching onto her because I just did not know what I was doing. Now, was I capable? Was I smart enough to do what I could do? Yes, but I just didn't know like logistics. We didn't even have a crime analysis unit manual. There were no SOPs. There was nothing. So 2 weeks later, this guy from Vegas shows up, and his name is Bruce Blackman. Instantly, yes.
I know, Bruce.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't realize. I didn't put the two and two together. Okay, yes, yeah, this is gonna be good.
So it is going to be good. So Bruce was a cop in Vegas for many years, but he told me he was always fascinated with their crime analyst. And he decided after he retired that he was going to go back to school and for crime analysis. And so he did. And I think Chat PD was his first job after he had graduated with a crime analysis degree. But he and I instantly clicked. The way we worked together, we instantly clicked. Super nice, super outgoing. He's one of those dudes that is just smart about all things when you talk to him. Like, have you ever talked to someone and they're very knowledgeable and relaxed and funny about everything they talk about? That is him. That is how he's so natural at everything.
He may be a police officer to start, but he is very technically inclined. He might as well be an IT guy. I mean,
100%.
Yes, and he's not like I always bellyache about IT being the party of no. Every time I ask them something, they just tell me no. But not him. Not him. He will figure it out. He'll give you lots of options. He is very helpful. Yes, he's very helpful.
He explains things to my like blonde self that he explains things so easy and just calmly, and he's a fantastic teacher, and I instantly grew to just love this man so much. So once he arrived, I said we instantly clicked. We became the best of buddies. He was so smart, and he began teaching me really before crime analytics, teaching me how to develop relationships with investigators and officers. He was like, you cannot learn about what's happening in your sector's streets without talking to the officers. They need to see your face. They need to look into your eyeballs. They need to like know that you exist. They need to understand that you're trying to help them. Like they need to become your best friends. And so I was nervous. All I knew was my property crimes buddies, and he helped me break down these barriers of just being relaxed and getting out from behind my desk and going to these guys' desks, sending emails to officers. I don't even think like the crime analysis unit sent emails to officers. I don't know if it was like a big no-no or if we just didn't, but I certainly did. I learned from him a lot about just creating those relationships. In September of that year, so we're still in 2016, we were told we're going to our first IACA conference. And I will tell you a side note from this about Bruce. At the end of that conference, I remember him saying and looking at me going, we cannot go back to CPD with how we were doing things. And I was like, do tell, what do you mean? And he had gone to, we didn't go to every class and every, seminar together. And he had learned a bunch of stuff. He had already learned a bunch of stuff from his schooling, but he said, we cannot go back and how did he word it? We cannot analyze crime if we're not reading crime every day. We've got to be tactically every day reading crime. And I said, you're right. I mean, I can't do anything if I don't know what's going on. And he said, exactly. So he put together this PowerPoint basically showing you write a query, and we were using SQL Server Management Studio. You write a query, you pull data in from the back end of our RMS, you extract it, you put it into a spreadsheet, and then you can analyze your data, and then you can put out products, and you're helpful and you're useful. So he created this, and I need to remind you that none of this was happening back then. So this was all brand new. And I said, I love it. Let's do it. So we came back to CPD. And at the time, Lieutenant Chambers was our boss. And he's a whole other issue. He's my biggest mentor to this day. But back then he was a lieutenant, and Bruce presented this presentation. And I don't think Lieutenant Chambers at the time knew all of what we were talking about regarding the technical jargon, but he knew enough to trust us. And he said, that looks great. If you can be helpful and start putting out products, then do it. Just make sure you can do your job. And so we ran with it. And so for 2 weeks, probably longer, I don't remember, it took a while, Bruce went under. And when I say under, he put his headphones on, we didn't talk to him for 2 weeks straight. And during that time, he was building our Part 1 crime queries for each one of our sectors. So City of Chattanooga has 3 sectors, Adam, Baker, Charlie. So he was building Part 1 crime, so ag assault, robbery, burglary, auto theft, and theft from motor vehicles, building those queries for each sector, for each crime. After he finally came up for air, he showed all of us how to run the queries, how to put that data into our spreadsheets, and how to read them and pull them in every day and analyze them every day. And that is the rest is history. Once we started doing that, it was game over. We were unstoppable. All of a sudden, people started realizing we had a crime analysis unit, and we started analyzing and putting out products. And to this day, the crime analysis unit at CPD today still uses those same queries that were built off the backs of my best buddy, Bruce. So that awesome. Is kind of my feel-good story about how I became a crime analyst. Bruce was my biggest mentor, and I definitely wouldn't be here right now if it weren't for him. Now, all of the other analysts in the unit definitely molded me, but there was something about our working relationship that has just always stuck with me.
Nice. So Bruce and I worked together teaching a advanced SQL class.
Oh my gosh.
At the IACA conference. I can't remember what year that would have been. It probably would have been about 2017.
Yeah, I think it was the next year.
Yeah.
Or the year after. Yeah.
Yeah. So he and I got to know each other as we were prepping for that class. And
that's awesome.
Yes. So I know firsthand exactly what you're describing.
That makes me feel really good because now I don't sound crazy or starstruck.
So as you're coming in to this role, obviously you are not classically trained, as you mentioned. You're coming in really cold to a lot of these concepts. But right. I guess with the background that you did bring with you, what do you think helped you along the way? Because obviously it's not like you sank, you succeeded, right? And so what do you think you brought to the table?
Well, I have one thing that I have never been able to put on my resume is that I'm a fast learner. I am actually the exact opposite. I'm a very, very slow learner. It's one reason why it took me an extra year to graduate college. It's the way my brain, I'm just very analytical and slow. And I like to make sure I understand all parts of all things before I do something. I've been that way since I was a kid. It's just the way my brain works. And so while I was never the fastest learner, on the flip side is once I learn something, I become like a master at it.
Mm.
So I got really, really good at analyzing crime, just tactical, good old fashioned 2 weeks to about a month long period worth of data. And I would find any pattern you could find. I would just find all the things. And Bruce was, again, he would show me about like how important time of day and day of week was in property crimes. He would show me that, okay, this may not look like it goes with this incident, but look up this one about a week ago prior to that. Like he just showed me how to analyze. And the way he taught me was that like, and I think I still carry this with me to this day, is that you can't really mess up anything. I mean, you can, but like you can't take risks. You don't need to be afraid to analyze things. You don't need to be afraid to be wrong. You need to like reach and like don't be one of those that's too afraid to try new things with your data. Try everything and see what works. He taught me, I would do time of day, day of week analyses. I would map things that didn't seem like it would be mappable or that wasn't related to something else. I did all the far reaching I could, because the more that I was trying and doing, the more I was learning. Because, like I said, I came in cold not knowing anything about any software. I didn't know what a
Mhm.
query was, I knew nothing. And he literally just taught me from the ground up, from scratch. And he taught me the foundation of what I needed to where I would be successful when he left. And that's a whole other story of when he left and I got real sad. But I tried everything. He was just amazing. He wasn't afraid to present in our comp stat meetings where I was shaking like a leaf.
Mhm.
It's because he just knew his data. Oh, he would do these little exercises with me like, okay, did you analyze all that data? And I'd go, yeah. And he'd go, okay, tell me what you learned. And I would pull up my spreadsheet and he'd be like, nope, just tell me. Tell me what you learned. And it really got me used to editing myself and less is more, and just learning the who, what, when, where, why, how, like what needs to be known, and take out all the rest of the junk.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was able to just tell him, but also doing that type of like exercise helps you just really understand your data.
Mm.
And I think sometimes analysts, we can rely too much on doing everything perfect, and our spreadsheets are great and we just analyze the 30 rows of data, but tell me what you just analyzed. So that way you can convey it. He was just, he was so great all around on teaching me all the things.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely got that in my day where it was just worrying about what the details say rather than the message that I'm summarizing. I know people are going to say like, well, okay, show me the details. What's the details? And so I would skip that step, even though you're very right in that it's an important step, but I knew as an analyst, I would have the tendency to skip that step.
Yes, and I also just naturally am a wordy person. I talk, 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 and I'm wordy, wordy, wordy. And he really taught me how to edit myself, take out even unnecessary words, keep it very simple. And I remember taking a class from Christopher Bruce, and he told us that if you needed to, you could do a bulletin on a paper napkin. You definitely can. But we like aesthetics and we like to show off all our skills. But I think just getting back to the very bare basics, and I will always be this type of analyst like Bruce taught me, is you can't analyze any crime if you're not reading crime every day. Now, whether that's manual, if something's automated, you still need to read your tactical crime every day. And it's just it was built into me from him.
Hey there, this is Jessica Elsmore, and this is your friendly daily reminder to remember why you started. Keep your passion, stay involved, and just remember what got you interested in crime analysis.
Hi, my name is Kyle Mcfatridge, and I want to talk to you today about merging in construction zones. You've probably understood merging in construction zones to be getting over as fast as you can. This is not correct. Merging lanes are designed to be filled all the way to the point they end, and traffic then merges one vehicle at a time. Think about it logically. Would traffic flow better if people randomly stopped, put on their turn signal, and tried to get over, or if both lanes were completely full? The lane is supposed to be full until the point you come to a traffic cone and can no longer fill it. So to the people that block that lane, swerve at cars, honk, yell, or flip off people trying to use the merging lane correctly, you are not only rude, you are wrong. You do not get angry at people who pass you in the left lane a couple miles from that construction site, so why would you then be angry at them for passing you at the construction site? So next time you come to a merge in a construction zone, remember to go all the way to the end and merge one car at a time. You will be doing it the right way and help make traffic flow much better for everyone, even for those angry people. Thank you.
This is Jennifer Loper. Wine, because no good story ever started with a salad.
All right, well, let's move on to your analyst badge story. And for those that may be new to the show, the analyst badge story is the career-defining case or project that an analyst works. And so this really starts in 2016 at the IACA conference in Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville, Kentucky.
Yes. So just to set the stage, and let's hear the story.
All right, so I became an official analyst in May of 2016, and that September was my first IACA conference in Louisville, Kentucky. Never been to a conference. We show up, and so, okay, first day, they had the opening ceremony, first speaker of the day, opening ceremony, this woman who's of age. She's of a certain age. She was definitely probably back then in her 70s or 80s. Marilyn Van Derber, I don't know if you listeners remember or were at that conference, but Marilyn Van Derber, she gave a presentation on how important an analyst's role can be in helping catch sexual predators, exhibitionists, sexual assault suspects, because she was sexually and incestually assaulted by her father from like 5 or 6 years old until she was 18 years old. Now, she did not come forward with this until she was in her 50s. Now, during her presentation, she's talking about how trauma affects the victim for the rest of their lives, like forever, not only just mentally, emotionally, but she even talked about physically how, like, I remember one point she was talking about she always had like this knot in her neck and she could never kind of get it to go away. She didn't know what was wrong. There was nothing wrong. It turns out way years later, she discovered it was like unhealed trauma. It was just stress trauma that made her ache. And anyway, during that presentation, towards the end of the presentation, she asked if anyone was brave enough, if they had been a victim of sexual assault, if they could stand. And I was not one of them, but man, the majority of the room stood up. It was just wild. There was not a dry eye in the house. Everyone was bawling. Everyone was crying. Her presentation profoundly hit me into my soul. It was very, very good. And I remember thinking, well, I want to be the type of analyst that is victim focused. I don't know how. I don't know what that looks like. I'm not even a good analyst. I don't know what I'm doing right now, but that's what I want to be. I want to get there somehow one day. She was also selling her book called Miss America by Day. It's called Miss America because she was in the Miss America pageant in the 1950s. She was Miss America. She was the picture of grace, beauty, education, money. She was an advocate of all these events that pageant winners go around for a year and they tour and they're in commercials and they're brand ambassadors for things. She did that. She ended up getting married and having a daughter. And in her 50s, She revealed that she was sexually assaulted by her father for the majority of her life. But she wrote this book, Miss America by Day, and I remember going to the back of the conference room and immediately buying her book. It was $20. I took $20 of my per diem money and bought it. And I read it when I got home without basically putting it down. And it was a thick book. She's a heavy victim advocate, a public speaker now. She teaches victims' rights. She's just awesome. She's incredible. I think she's in her early 90s now. Her presentation had a very profound effect on me, and still to this day. She is why I want to be a good analyst, basically. Her and Bruce.
Nice.
Yeah. So fast forward to a couple of years later, like late 2000, I think it's actually 2019. I could be wrong. Late 2018. By now, I'm an analyst for about 2.5, 3 years, and I'm getting kind of good at it. I still think you're like a newbie when you're 5 years or younger, right? Like it's kind of like the rookie cop. You're still considered a rookie, even though you've been a cop for like 5 years. You still have so much to learn. With the help of my coworker, who was an analyst at the time, we got a call about an exhibitionist that was in one of our sectors. He was going around to playgrounds and flashing children. Marilyn Van Derber and her book and her presentation instantly go back into my mind. And I'm like, oh, no, not today. We are going to find him. Because I remembered that in her presentation, she talked about how even slight sexual assaults can have lasting lifetime effects on the victim. And I was thinking these children were 5 and 6 years old at a playground. I didn't want them traumatized for the rest of their life. And I knew I had to catch the suspect. So me and my coworker, we kind of broke all the rules. We did not just stay in our chain of command, but we ended up finding out, very long story short, we ended up finding out that the suspect crossed over state lines and boundary lines, exposing himself everywhere. And we found out he was on the sex offender registry, like in Georgia and North Carolina. So we had all these agencies involved. We had a special victims unit involved. We had patrol on the lookout. It was this huge thing. We put out a product, and all of our hard work, we did end up catching him. Nice. And he is still in jail to this day. I look him up every once in a while to make sure that he's still in jail. But that is my badge story, because I think I've done cooler things analytical wise, like and product wise and catching bad guys. But it's one of the things that I'm most proud of because of the way I want to be an analyst. I want to always think of the victim, and it just had a profound effect on me. Her presentation and then catching this guy a few years later, it was what I set out to do, the type of analyst I wanted to be. And it kind of, my little dreams came true on how I wanted to be an analyst.
Nice. All right. So let's move on then, because as I said in your introduction, you take a job with Hamilton County government as an analyst. So yeah, let's get into that gig.
So I was a crime analyst in the crime analysis unit from 2016 to 2023. Then they opened up a gang intelligence analyst in the organized crime unit, which is in a whole different building than our main police service center. And I apply for that job and I get the job. During that time, I am primarily focused on our narcotics unit and working drug overdoses. So I start analyzing drug overdoses, and I was really good at it. It became kind of like my second passion of these people that were addicted to substances. I had read Dreamland by Sam Quinones, obviously Dope Sick by Beth Macy, and the narcotics unit, our overdoses in Chattanooga were happening faster than they could keep up with. That's one reason why they wanted them to start being tracked. I kind of called them the repeaters. And so that was anybody that had overdosed more than twice. I started keeping track of them. So then we could send their name to like our drug coalition and hopefully try to like reach out to them and offer them help and services. Because most of the time I was seeing these individuals that it wasn't going to be if they died, it was going to be when they died. And through data from all the overdoses I tracked that I had data of from 2017 to 2023, I watched heroin leave and fentanyl come on the scene in Chattanooga through data. It was wild. And our narcotics unit couldn't keep up. It was definitely the primary social harm affecting our community. But I say all of this because in 2023, I got offered a job to go to Hamilton County government and to create this report basically about overdoses. And I didn't understand what I would be doing. I didn't want to leave because by then I had been with the city for 17 years. It was a very big change for me. It turns out that Hamilton County was going to receive $1.2 to $1.5 million in opioid abatement funds for the next 18 years. Hamilton County Mayor Weston Wamp was aggressively going to spend that money. He definitely wanted to put that money to good use. He was going to start trying to do an MAT program at the jails. He was going to create an opioid response team with EMS. He was going to give some cash to community agencies, like kind of like a grant type thing to where they could use it. So for prevention, for recovery, he was aggressively spending the money. And that's what we want. That's what you want counties to do, is to spend that money to put back into the community to kind of heal from the opioid epidemic. But the very first thing that he spent the money on was hiring an analyst, because they didn't know what they didn't know. They didn't know what the opioid epidemic looked like in the county. In the city of Chattanooga limits, we looked at everything from a policing perspective. We wanted the suspect, we wanted the dealers, but this goes kind of into social harm. I didn't know there was anything else besides overdoses from a policing point of view. I didn't know that there was emergency room data, that there was Narcan data from EMS administrations. I didn't know about recovery housing. I didn't know about destigmatization. I didn't know about any of that when I was just an intel analyst in the narcotics unit. So when I got this job, even though I wasn't a crime analyst anymore, I was having to learn about public policy and health data, public health data. I was reaching out to our epidemiologist in the epidemiology department at our health department, learning about the software they use to analyze overdose data. And yes, they do analyze overdose data because it is a public health crisis. It's not just a crime or social harm crisis. So I started learning all of this. Mayor Weston Wamp wanted me to create this report, cleverly called Hamilton Counted. And I thought that was very clever. I love that. And again, I was starting from scratch. I knew nothing. I knew no one. I did not have any of my crime contacts, like any of my crime software anymore. I was no longer a crime analyst, but he trusted me to create this report. And he wanted to do first the three primary social harms affecting Hamilton County, which was homelessness, the opioid epidemic, and substance use disorder, and crime data. Eventually, the report grew to include victim services data like child abuse and domestic violence. It grew to include education data, and it kind of became my baby. I think when I left, I ended up having a total of 19 different partners that shared their data with me every month, and I created this quarterly report called Hamilton Counted. I am wildly proud of what I did. We created a whole brand for it. We had a whole brand kit. It was the first time that data was accessible to the public and transparent for the public to see. And I don't know, I mean, it's definitely a good thing that accountability and transparency through data was kind of like our tagline. And it allowed the end user to have, data at their fingertips for the first time in Hamilton County. I was there for literally 2 years. And I started missing crime. I was really missing crime. And so to come back full circle, that Lieutenant Chambers was now the chief. He is the current chief of CPD. And back when he was a lieutenant, we all knew that he would be chief one day. You could just tell talking to him. The guy he's a former SWAT guy. He works out every day. He has these big muscles. I remember him coming in with this lunchbox that had like 6 trays in it. That was like his meals for the day. And he was very disciplined. He would drink protein shakes at our staff meetings. And this really cool guy, but that also understood technology and the value of data, even back when he first was over our crime analysis unit. And I knew there was a very limited window of opportunity to come back and be a crime analyst under Chief Chambers' leadership. And I said, I got to go. while he's the chief, this is what I've been wanting for a decade. He's now the chief, so I need to go back. And I did. I came back to Chattanooga Police Department, and now I'm a crime analyst again.
Nice. Now, so back to the county job and the social harm data. And you went into it a little bit, but I'm just want to ask you directly. That's a data set that, as you said, you were not aware of as an analyst. But for an analyst listening to this, that may be a data set that, while they're not directly working on an opioid case, there may be data in there that will help them in their current job.
Oh, 100%. Back when I was the narcotics analyst, I call it the trifecta. You have emergency room data, Narcan data by EMS, which is extremely important. And on a side note, back then, the only people that had access to Narcan was like emergency rooms and EMTs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now Narcan's everywhere. Everyone has Narcan. But back then, when I was the analyst, nobody had that much access to it. So the EMS data was huge. And then you have the police data, which is only data that generated a police report. Well, as a crime analyst, I was only looking at it from that one side as
Mm-hmm.
just police data. Now, we look at everything from a crime perspective, that's our job, but you're missing the whole picture. You're missing what other drugs are people dying from that you can learn, like xylazine and carfentanil. You can learn all of those things from your epidemiologist. You can learn those things from your medical examiner's office. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have access to any of that as a crime analyst, but I did as a county analyst. Because I wasn't a crime analyst and I was under the mayor's office, I had access to all of these people that I was able to create relationships with and get buy-in, and they generously gave me their data to publish it. And it was also the first time that my products were being published to an actual public, to the community. As a crime analyst, our stuff is all internal. It's all internal. It was very nerve-wracking to have things being published to the 382 people in Chattanooga or Hamilton County, but I like to see the whole picture, and I wasn't seeing the whole picture as an analyst for narcotics unit at the time. That things that could wildly help me back then, if that makes sense.
It seems like one of your superpowers as an analyst is you get assigned a task and you turn into this sponge in which you can just totally immerse yourself into knowing everything you can about that particular topic.
Well,
And well, but I guess my point is, and you get assigned different tasks in different cases, but I think that opportunity to become either a subject matter expert or even a semi subject matter expert can be lost with certain departments or certain centers because it's just like a quick turnaround type of thing. It's just you're just real quick, study this a little bit. You can't spend 2 weeks, 2 months on this. We gotta do what we can and then move on. The analyst could be a jack of all trades and just spread so thinly. So I just
you're
want to
exactly right.
give you an opportunity to, like, it sounds like you had and you took the opportunity to really take on some of these cases and tasks that you were assigned.
I think what makes not only just my experience unique was just the timing, because I came in when the crime analysis unit was basically nothing.
Hmm.
That's when they were building our real-time intelligence center, which I was the first analyst in here that it was also built from the ground up. Sergeant Billy Atwell, who's still here, is now like the subject matter expert in our real-time intelligence center because he built it from the ground up. I became known as like the shots fired girl because I took CAD data and combined it with RMS so we could get a full picture.
Hmm.
Because I could just pull RMS, report types, but you're missing a lot of the data if you don't pull CAD. I look at everything as also like kind of like, what will this data show me, not right now, but how can it still help me or help someone a year from now, 5 years from now? So I've always just been this way, is learning everything I can about a process or an assignment and then giving it my best shot. I think people can either work fast or work thorough, and it's really hard to do both. I choose
Mm-hmm.
not to work fast, but I would rather be thorough and have very little margin of error than work fast and pump out stuff so fast that I don't even know what I just did because everything's so fast. I think all the timing of everything during my early days was new crime analysis unit, new real-time intelligence center. They had just started a gun team, which was doing NIBIN. And now we have a crime gun intelligence center because we're like a national model. All of these things started all on the backs of people that had great ideas and didn't have a lot of resources, but just did what they could in the moment, including me. I did not have the fancy software, and I did a lot of stuff by hand and by manual at the time, not because of my passion, but because I cared. So you always hear about people that you have a lot of just naturally talented people that are just born talented, and then you have a lot of hard workers. And I feel like I fall in where there are more talented people than me, and there are probably harder workers than me, but you'll be hard pressed to find someone that like cares more than me. You see it in my products, you see it in my relationships. It's just the way that I decide to work. I want to show that I'm putting great care into things. And I think that makes all the difference as an analyst. Angela Duckworth wrote the book Grit, and she talks about that, about how some people that aren't born very talented, but like work their butts off, can end up basically becoming more talented because they worked hard, not because they have like this innate natural talent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely not one of those analysts. I don't have a background in it. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. But I think you asked earlier, what do you bring from your previous life as a DJ? I think personality. A lot of analysts, we're all nerdy, and we're very nerdy, and we sit all day and we don't get up. And I'm the exact opposite. I think creating those relationships helps you become reliable, helps people trust you. When you send a product, even if you make an error, they don't judge you for it because they already know how you work, because you've created those relationships. The relationships are everything, and that's how you also build up your leadership skills.
Nice.
Did I ramble too much? I'm so sorry.
You didn't, but you remembered our prep call, and you segued very, very nicely, because where I want to go into is get into your advice for the listeners. And part of this advice is talking about the physical health of analysts. We've talked on the show before about mental health and just the awful things that analysts see and how that needs to be addressed. But I don't think I've ever talked about the physical health of an analyst.
100%. So in 2022, 3, when I went to organized crime, I started realizing that I had a hard time walking. Like the bottom of my right foot would hurt, my hip was really tight, my wrist was hurting, my fingers were hurting, and I was like, this is the end. This is what's happening. This is what it's like to get old. But I realized after many doctor's appointments, much research, trying to self-diagnose myself and seeing many doctors, that it's because I sat too long. I sat for like 8 years up to this point. I sat for 8 years and like barely got up. We as analysts, we're hunched over our computer and our keyboard, and we're staring at spreadsheets with numbers and photos all day, especially when like admin numbers, charts and graphs and lines. I mean, it's the worst on your eyes. We're clicking and typing and clicking and clicking constantly. And back in the day, before there was more software that they have now, I did everything manual, and a lot of my reports were so click heavy. And I just sat all day. I would rarely get up. And I think it was the culmination of 8 years worth of just sitting all day. Oh, not to mention, ladies out there, I would wear high heels to work because I wanted to be professional and nice. And so, but then I'm in high heels and I'm sitting at my desk still in high heels, so my feet are squished into these like pointy, horrible shoes for you. And I would just sit there for 8 hours, and it really, really took a toll on me. I don't know if I can speak for other analysts or lady analysts out there, but I'm telling you, the job literally took its toll on me. And when I got asked to come work at the county, it could not have been better timing, because I think I was not just burnt out mentally wise of doing gangs, guns, and dope, because that's what I had done. I was the violent crime analyst my whole time, and then I went to the gang unit, and like not only was I burnt out, but physically I don't know if I would have lasted much longer. At one point I remember I was in a boot. I had horrible plantar fasciitis. I did everything but crawl to the bathroom. It was awful. And I was like, what is wrong with me? And after speaking with so many doctors and doing a lot of online research, I found out it was because I'm not moving enough. And not just like moving enough. I mean, I could still be a runner, and if I was only running after work, that's not enough. It's not enough. Our bodies aren't meant to sit all day. And so when I joined the county, I worked at on the third floor of this building, and I said enough's enough. I've got to start finding ways to put myself first in that sense, because I am no good to any body if I'm sitting here in pain. And so I began doing a ton of walking. I began climbing the steps. I got a stand-up desk. I got a walk pad. I took many breaks throughout the day. And I think in my earlier years, I was trying to prove myself, and I would just put in the hours. I would burn the midnight oil. And I realized that what I thought was probably emergencies back then were likely not emergencies. There's not many things that are really true emergencies that couldn't wait, or that still didn't deserve me having a break. And I just wouldn't take breaks. And now I'm like the exact opposite. I take tons of breaks throughout the day. I take brain breaks. I get up a lot. I go walking with my coworkers. I just want to make sure that I'm putting my best self first, so then I can give my best. I am no good to anyone if I'm not my best. And the crime and the work that we're doing deserves that. And we deserve that as analysts. We deserve the breaks and stretching and getting up and walking around. And don't eat at your desk. Go eat somewhere. Like, get away. I'm a huge proponent of getting up, and the physical part of being an analyst. It takes its toll. So we need to take better care of ourselves and prioritize getting up and taking breaks, and not just physical breaks, but also brain breaks. They're huge.
Nice. Good advice.
Well, thanks.
One of the things for those listeners that have never been on the show, have never gone through my prep process for the show, one of the things I ask every guest for is a resume or CV. And so, and I did the same with you, Jen, but I was a big smile on my face when I open up your resume, and I'm like, what is this? This is very colorful. This is a bulletin. You just sent me a bulletin as a resume, and it's not anything that I think I've ever seen in the 5 years of collecting resumes for the show. So
that's hilarious that you describe it as a bulletin. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, it just looks and feels. It's a one-pager with lots of color and graphics, and you reference it as an infographics resume.
It is. It's an infographic resume. I mean, resumes are boring, and I got my degree in business, and I learned you've got about 20 seconds to capture your audience's attention on that boring paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do use the regular boring formats of resumes when I apply for a job. You know how you have to upload your resume.
Mm-hmm.
I do that. But when I interview in person, I bring that in my portfolio, and I just think that helps people. Their eyes are more catchy, and it's not so wordy. Everything's kind of summarized in little bitty compartmentalized boxes. I think it's kind of nice. It's fun, huh?
Yeah, no,
it may not be the most professional, but I like it.
No, it pops, it flows, it directs your eyes, it does
Yay!
everything that a bulletin that you would expect a bulletin to do.
Mission
right?
accomplished. Yes.
And would you be okay if I posted your resume?
Sure, I sure would.
Okay, so for the listeners, then look in the show notes. You'll see her resume, and you'll see what we're talking about to give you a better idea. All right, you mentioned portfolio, so every time someone mentions portfolio on the show, I got to mention Sean Bear because Sean
Mm.
Bear was in my original 5 analysts that I interviewed for the podcast. So it's coming up on 5 years. We
Awesome.
started. It was probably around this time I interviewed him, and so June 1st is the podcast anniversary, and we
Yay!
and we published 5 episodes in one day, and one of them was Sean Bear. And so I will put a link to Sean's episode in the show notes, but I'll also put in he and I did a series on a guide to hiring a law enforcement analyst. And it's a 7-part series where we created a cycle and go over all the parts of hiring from beginning to end. And
Yes.
so I will put a link to that. That's its own web page on the website in LAA Podcast. It's at the top header. But he is a big proponent of the portfolio
I
and
am too.
just showing your work.
There is no other way for an interview panel to see what you can do. Now, they can give you like I guess what's it called, a test assessment, a data
Hmm.
assessment, where you analyze some crime really quick and you probably likely put together a bulletin in front of them, But what about your past work? Show me products you've already done so I can kind of see the analyst you kind of are, right? I look at it as like back in my radio days, nobody cared about your hard copy resume. Nobody cared which radio station you worked at. We had what was called air checks, which was just basically sound bites of you being a DJ so they could hear how you sounded because that's what they cared about. So if you're going to interview for a crime analyst spot, I feel like it only makes sense that they see your crime analytical products. I definitely, and plus it's very professional. I'm huge on professionalism and wearing suits and doing all the things for an interview, bringing your very best self forward.
Nice. Let's finish up with personal interest then. You mentioned it earlier that you are into musical theater and that you have consistently done that, worked in the theater even beyond your time in college.
Oh, yeah. So I am involved with a playhouse, an amphitheater playhouse where I live, Signal Mountain, Tennessee, which is just a little suburb outside of Chattanooga. I've been involved with it since I was like 10 years old. I love musical theater. I've done it my whole life. So that's what I like to do for fun. I started taking piano lessons as a 40-year-old woman. When I turned 40, I started taking piano lessons. I found a piano teacher. I bought a digital keyboard, a digital piano, and I started taking piano lessons, and I've been taking them since I was 40, and I'm going to be 43 this year. So I think that's kind of neat. I'd never learned how to play a musical instrument, and I think it was just kind of like a bucket list item. And to always get uncomfortable and to do things that you think you can't do, go do them anyway. And that's what I did, and that's what I'm doing. So musical theater, piano. I have a German Shepherd. I live on 6 acres, so I like to spend a lot of time outside. Yeah, I'm actually just very boring. I like to read and listen to audiobooks and podcasts.
But the musical theater, is this where you're headlining? Do you have solos?
All of the
What?
above. All of the
Yes.
above. I've been like, I call it tree number 3 when you're just chorus, when you're cast as chorus or background. I call
Mm-hmm.
it tree number 3 because it just means you're just in the background. I've had some fairly good roles, but I think what part I didn't tell you, that the thing that makes the musical theater very special is that I do it with my mom. So my mom has also been doing musical theater since 1995, and so we do it together. It's loads of fun. My favorite musical is Lil Abner. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that. So that's what I do. I do musical theater. I like to go see Broadway shows and musical theater shows at my local theaters here in town. I like soundtracks of musical theater.
Well, very good. Well, our last segment to the show is Words to the World. This is where you can promote any idea that you wish. Jen, what are your words to the world?
I think right now the most important thing going on in all of the United States is this opioid epidemic. I will always be talking about it because it's so, so important, especially all of our preconceived notions and the stereotypes of what we think a person that uses drugs looks like. is not the case anymore. Addiction has no barriers. Addiction has no prejudice. It can attack anyone. It can attack, quote, the soccer mom, to the athlete that got injured, to the lawyer, to the professor, a teacher, all the way to teenagers and young kids that are just starting high school. It knows no bounds. It's a very real, serious thing. It's one of my greatest passions is substance use disorder and fighting the opioid epidemic. My words to the world are to just, if you're an analyst, find something that is affecting your community and find that passion and work on it. It could be homelessness. It could be catalytic converter thefts. It could be the opioid epidemic. It could be anything. But find something that can help you grow as an analyst that will make your analytical products have huge value based on the context you're giving it that is outside of law enforcement.
Very good. Will I leave every guest with you giving me just enough to talk bad about you later?
Yes.
But I do appreciate you being on the show, Jen. Thank you so much, and you be safe.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for making it to the end of another episode of Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. You can show your support by sharing this and other episodes found on our website at www.leapodcasts.com. If you have a topic you would like us to cover or have a suggestion for our next guest, please send us an email at leapodcasts@gmail.com. Till next time, analysts, keep talking.